Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Ray from the Bloomfield Public Library. Thank you for joining us today for the Metabolic Approach with Dr. Christine. I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Doctor.
Hi, all. Thank you guys so much for joining. I really look forward to giving this talk. Oh, let me see. You guys see my slides moving? Good. Okay. So I am the founder of Food First MD. This is a grassroots metabolic medicine practice. I am accepting new patients. Um, these are, more about my credentials, and I'm gonna, talk to you today about metabolism. And I'm gonna start by sharing my story and my journey and what qualifies me to talk about metabolism. So I am among the first generation of my family born in the US. My parents are both from Lebanon, and I spent my childhood growing up between both countries. I went to school stateside and I spent my summers in Lebanon, and I noticed how drastically different I would feel and look while I was overseas, just adopting a different lifestyle, eating different foods. And I also found it very curious that I always really struggled to control my weight, despite coming from a family where everybody else in Lebanon was healthy and lean. And my whole life, my whole childhood, I really tried to figure it out. In middle school, I did Weight Watchers. I was a three-sport athlete, and despite being active, counting calories, tracking points, um, I spent a lot of time really trying to figure out how to lose weight, cycling on and off diets, but I always regained it all back, every single pound, plus a little more. And when it came time to go to school, I really focused my educational path on trying to figure out how did my body fat work. I got a bachelor's in biochemistry and graduated in 2011, and that was really, honestly, the best education I got for metabolic medicine. It is the foundation of my practice, and, everything kinda came around full story to that education, but at the time, I didn't know what I knew until a couple of years later. So, in 2016, I actually graduated from medical school and, got a master's in nutrition during medical school. I finished both at the same time. I was very underwhelmed by the lack of nutrition education that medical school offered, and so I sought to expand my knowledge and partake in this master's program. And now, despite all of this education, I was still busting out of my pants as a medical doctor with a master's in nutrition. I really couldn't figure it out. And what's worse, not only was my weight like spiraling out of control, despite doing everything I thought I could do, despite a master's thesis on bariatric surgery, despite intimately working with dietitians, obesity medicine doctors, bariatric surgeons. I was working one-on-one counseling patients to lose weight with the most up-to-date strategies. And despite all of that knowledge, my waistline expanded. And what's worse, as an intern in the first year of residency, I was getting like symptomatic hangry. If I was late for lunch, I got brain fog, couldn't focus. I became irritable and anxious without food. I was constantly cold. I was always hungry. I broke out in eczema for the first time in my life. I was sicker and heavier than ever before, despite mindful eating, despite hours of meal prep, despite diligently counting my calories and a $300 a month trainer at the gym. I really felt broken. And if I couldn't help myself, how was I going to help anybody else? I really, I really started to read books and I kept learning. And I discovered something called the metabolic approach. And what do you know? It really just kind of worked like magic. I saw effortless weight loss. And what was even more profound was how my brain seriously transformed. I didn't know what amazing felt like until I had booming energy. I went from having to write down every single thing that a patient told me in an ER to honestly, just being able to listen, remember, recall, and even talk to other patients, other doctors, and then go chart later when I had the time to. What was, the best part was my anxiety. Just it literally just went away. For the first time, I could be what they all called the observer of emotions, and let, you know, and manage stress and manage high anxiety situations much better. So this was profound, and I really kind of took a step back and was like, there's kind of a bigger problem here. Like what was missing from my education? And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to try to delineate the differences between the metabolic approach and what I offer and how we practice here at Food First MD versus the standard approach, which is how I was trained and what is offered in regular routine settings. So, the first difference is that a metabolic approach looks at the entire body holistically. In modern medicine, what we do is we break up the body into different organs. There is a special doctor for your lung, a special doctor for your heart, two doctors for your brain. There's a psychiatrist and a neurologist. You've got a doctor for absolutely everything, but nobody is actually looking at all of the cells and what's really unifying your body as a whole holistically. And the unifying piece here are these little organelles inside your cells, called mitochondria. So your metabolism and the metabolic approach, let me take a step back, is looking at, in a broad sense, how your body obtains energy. And your body obtains energy through these little mitochondria. Okay, what do you guys know about mitochondria? Typically, I'm giving this in a big room and people shout out, powerhouse of the cell. So I hope you said that silently inside your head, or you thought, oh, I've never heard of it. But I'm going to give 3 quick facts about your mitochondria, your metabolism. Your mitochondria, again, these are little tiny things inside all of your cells, inside every single organ, throughout your entire body. And these little organelles take oxygen and food and make energy with that. That's how you do the processes of life. You get your mitochondria exclusively from your mother. This is inherited through the egg that comes from the mom. And that's really cool. This was also my opportunity to spam you with pictures of my kids who have mitochondria from me. And the third fun fact about mitochondria I'm going to share is that it is self-cleansing. And so your mitochondria have this fascinating ability to remove toxic parts. So your metabolism and making energy is actually a very toxic process. And as a way of healing and self-cleansing, your mitochondria can do that and remove any damaged parts as long as you give it the opportunity to do that. And this typically happens while you're asleep. And so good reason to not give up on your dreams. All right, so other than being holistic, the metabolic approach is really looking at a lot of what we call diseases in modern medicine as symptoms with an underlying root cause. What do I mean by this? Modern medicine will take all of these diseases and consider them as independent chronic diseases, saying that they are all separate in nature, they all require separate treatment algorithms and separate doctors to treat them. The metabolic approach looks at this with a different perspective. It takes all of the chronic diseases and calls them symptoms of an underlying problem, which is most significantly a broken metabolism that is rooted in food and lifestyle. And this is really the paradigm through which Food First MD practices medicine. There are other root cause factors other than food, medications, infections, toxins, genetics. These are important factors too. But by and large, using a food first approach, we have a unifying solution, which is the next big difference. In standard medicine, there's really no solution to these diseases. They're considered chronic and progressive, and it is assumed that you are going to stay on medications for life. But I'm telling you from experience, clinically, if you are looking at your body through the perspective that it's just this vat of chemistry, and if you seek to change the inputs, meaning change what you're eating, you can change the chemistry inside of you to look and feel completely different. Again, offering a potential solution. There are other problems that food can cause outside of a broken metabolism, and I'm not going to dive into those today. What I want to spend my time talking to you about is the elephant in the room, which is a broken metabolism leading to a lot of symptoms or things that modern medicine would label as chronic diseases. Why is this? This is so important. It is important because 9 out of 10 adults display symptoms of a broken metabolism. Um, Rates of obesity are skyrocketing in step with rates of type 2 diabetes. Again, modern medicine calls these separate diseases. The metabolic approach would consider these symptoms of the same underlying process. What's very scary about the rates of diabetes is how it's increasing in children, in stepwise with rates of mental health. These are rates of mental health days. And so this begs the question, what broke? I'm saying that your metabolism is broken, but like, what actually broke? What is it that I am helping people to fix? This is the key. This lesson right here that I'm going to give over the next 10 to 15 minutes is key to understanding how to solve this problem. Okay, so your metabolism, how your body gets energy, is through these organelles, mitochondria. Okay, very important to understand. We use terminology like, oh, you're burning energy, you're burning fuel. It's important to understand that your body does not burn like a fire. What do I mean like that by that? When you feed a fire a piece of wood, it burns louder, hotter, stronger. It combusts that wood spontaneously and immediately. But your body does not do that when you eat food. It doesn't just burn food because you ate food. It takes energy to make energy, and making that energy is a toxic process. So it's not going to just combust the food and burn it because you eat it. It actually wants to store the food you're eating first and only burn what it needs when it needs it. So your body's nothing like a fire. Okay. In order for that system to work properly, this has to work properly. Body fat. I ask all my patients what body fat is. Everybody's really confused by that question. And these are the most common answers I get, pretty negative. But I'm here to tell you that body fat is an organ. This is medical school's missing chapter. If somebody taught me this lesson, I would have spared myself probably a decade of yo-yo dieting because I would have understood how my body fat worked. Body fat is an organ, and it's not discussed like that in standard medical education or in a medical clinical setting. It's an organ. It's just as important as all of your other organs, your heart, your brain, your liver. It is supposed to be there. You are not fat. You've got fat on your body, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. It helps to regulate your body temperature, protects other organs. But most importantly, it's a place for your food to go when you eat it, because food can't stay in your stomach and it can't stay in your bloodstream. It has to go somewhere. You're not going to burn it just because you ate it like a fire would. You got to put it somewhere. Is the organ that was completely designed to accept that food and store it in the form of fat, because that is a very compact form way to store energy. And believe me or not, your body fat is actually always supposed to be shrinking. It is always supposed to be giving you these long fats that your mitochondria take and use to make ATP. Your cells will also take those long fats and use them as building blocks, because all of your all of your cells in your entire body are actually surrounded by long fats. So these are important building blocks and energy substrates. Um, and so your body fat will always be shrinking unless something tells it not to shrink and to get bigger instead. And that is controlled by hormones because your organs are controlled by hormones. And there's one hormone in particular that has complete control over your body fat when that hormone is around. And that hormone is insulin. Now, most people think of insulin as sugar, diabetes, a diabetes medication. All those things are true. But what you should think of insulin as is your master metabolic hormone. Insulin's primary job is to make sure when you eat food, that food goes where it's supposed to go in your body. It doesn't just regulate sugar, it regulates all food when it gets in your body. And again, it can manipulate and control all of your organs to get the job done. It is totally the boss. Okay, so you've got this organ, body fat, responsible for storing food, and you have a hormone, insulin, responsible for distributing food. And it makes complete sense that insulin and body fat are their best friends for life. The best way to actually think about insulin is that insulin is a fat storing hormone. That's what it's doing. It's distributing food and it's storing most of it as fat. So when you eat food, any kind of food, you get a release of insulin, and that insulin goes to your body fat that is supposed to always be shrinking. And it says, hey, body fat, we've got some food we need to store. Why don't you stop shrinking? Remove some food from the bloodstream, store it, and get a little bigger. And this is really a key part of the human body and how your body works. The body fat cycle. Your body fat is designed to shrink and expand on a day-to-day basis. It kind of breathes. It kind of breathes like a lung. Lungs shrink and expand more on a second-to-second basis. And your body fat does that more on a 24-hour basis. Did you guys know that your body fat controls your brain? So as your body fat expands, because it is storing food like it's supposed to, it produces within it a hormone called leptin. A lot of people think leptin is your appetite suppressing hormone. Leptin actually has absolutely nothing to do with ending a meal. Leptin is a circadian hormone, meaning based on your circadian rhythm at about 9-10 o'clock at night when you're about to go to sleep, and in the morning time your fat tissue will release this hormone leptin, and leptin will travel to your brain, to your hypothalamus, which is the energy control center in your brain, and it is signaling to your brain that you have energy. You've got good energy for life, you've got energy for puberty, you've got energy to make a baby. Your hypothalamus controls your thyroid hormone, your sex hormones, all the other metabolic hormones, all controlled through this body fat brain link. Which brings me back to the body fat cycle. Your body fat, again, was designed to shrink and expand, and it's key to understanding what is supposed to happen after you eat a meal. You're supposed to go right back to shrinking your body fat and releasing these small fats. Now, at some point during the day, typically at night while you're sleeping and you're not really eating food, there's a lot of long fats might be leaving your body fat. And now these long fats, like I said, these are a prime source of energy for ATP that let me rephrase that. Your mitochondria will make a lot of ATP from these long fats. However, the caveat is that they're really long. And so they take time to get from your bloodstream into your mitochondria, and they don't cross into your brain very easily because they're very big. In your body, if it senses a lot of these long fats, it will take these long fats and cut them into short fats. And those short fats are called ketones. And a lot of people have a lot of misunderstanding about what ketones are. But let me reassure you, these ketones, these are short fats, and these are ideal energy sources for your brain, your heart, your muscle, and your body fat. Literally every organ that ketones are used to fuel works federally. That's what the studies show. Ketones work so well because they're simply small fats that can diffuse right into any cell that is in need of energy and rescue that cell and give it kind of a new form of life. This is a slide, a snapshot that I expect nobody to understand, but just to show you the chemical changes that happen inside your brain when ketones are there. The changes, to sum it up, it is as if somebody would take an Adderall and a Xanax at the same time. It's very focusing and calming. And these were exactly the changes that I was experiencing and I was feeling when I made a transition over to this lifestyle, and why I felt amazing and my energy got better and my memory got better and my anxiety went away. We have evidence for why that happened. Ketones are hormonally active. They tell your cells to make more antioxidants, block inflammation, and turn on lean genes of longevity. They're literally changing the epigenetic profile inside cells, all to your benefit. And honestly, if you are living with good respect to your body fat cycle, you should be making ketones at some point in a 24-hour period, even if it is at night while you're sleeping. And so those are the key differences between the metabolic approach and the standard approach. Key to understanding that the problem being a broken metabolism, we can reframe that to say it's a broken body fat cycle. Meaning, if we are hyperstimulating the food pathway here, we will develop a hormonal imbalance called hyperinsulinemia. Now, what exactly is happening with this? What's happening is that as you eat food, insulin, your fat storing hormone, is telling your fat to stop shrinking and to fill up and expand. And that's what's happening. Your fat cells are filling up and expanding, and your insulin levels are rising in direct proportion to those fat cells filling up because there's less room for food to be stored. And insulin is the boss, and insulin wants to get its job done. And so its levels are rising, in a sense, getting louder and louder, trying to shove more fat into your fat cells. And this is how you can develop this hormonal imbalance called hyperinsulinemia, or high levels of insulin in your blood. And again, this is like insulin trying to shove fat, carbs, any food into your fat cells. And eventually your fat cells will hit this genetic threshold where they can't fill up anymore, and you'll start to spill fat out into your bloodstream. And fat will then go and deposit around your organs. This is called visceral fat. Body fat, your organ, is supposed to be right under your skin from head to toe. And if that stuff fills up, out into your organs. And so you can see how under a microscope, the difference in what a healthy fat organ looks like versus a sick fat organ. Yeah. So over time, really what can cause and wreak havoc on your body that are high levels of insulin. Nobody wakes up with any of these diseases. These are all slow, chronic, and progressive, and they happen over time. When high levels of insulin are acting on your body fat and there's no more space to fill the food, at some point, you'll develop type 2 diabetes because everything will spill out into your into your bloodstream. Fat ends up depositing everywhere all over your body. High levels of insulin acting on female ovaries lead to polycystic ovarian syndrome. Insulin tells cells to grow. So if you have a precancerous growth, it can accelerate cancerous growth. There's actually a whole body of literature suggesting that cancer is a disease of metabolism. And if you didn't know, Alzheimer's disease is actually considered type 3 diabetes because it's effectively insulin resistance in your brain. But these are end stage diseases, and I don't want you to wait until you have any of these to take action. I want you to know the early symptoms so you could take action now. And these are the earliest symptoms. These are exactly what was happening to me in my life: an expanding waistline, carb cravings, and this feeling hangry. This feeling hangry is happening because of this hormonal imbalance. So hangry, these are a lot of vague symptoms that a lot of people very commonly have, and they don't realize it's because when they're eating foods, they're getting over secretion of this hormone insulin, which is blocking access to their portable battery pack, which is your body fat essentially, and it's also telling your body to remove energy from your bloodstream and store it. And that's a very uncomfortable feeling. And, again, we can get blood work. Other than those early symptoms, we can get blood work to detect if this is happening. Uh, and so, again, to review and to summarize, the difference between the metabolic approach and the standard approach, in just a word, is that in the metabolic approach, there's actually some hope that you can get better, because if you understand the broken body fat cycle and understand how food plays into all of that, you can undo some of what's done. And there's not much hope in the standard approach. There are medications that can symptomatically cover the symptoms, but not get to the root cause in the same way using food to change the internal chemistry of your body can. This is profoundly more powerful than any single drug. There is no drug on the planet that gets the results that this metabolic approach will. These are snapshots from the results of a study that was done in France on chronically ill psychiatric patients. This doctor had been seeing these 28 patients for years. They had bipolar, major depression, and schizophrenia. He had tried every single medication that he could, and they were all considered treatment-resistant cases. And he hospitalized them and put them on this eating plan and got 43% clinical remission. Let me tell you, there's not a drug on the planet that does that. 100% symptom improvement, 96% weight loss, 64% of patients were discharged on less medications. This is a list of medications from my practice alone, from the 2 years I've been in practice, that I have helped people get off of or reduce. And this is not including the bags of supplements that people come into the office with. Powerful, powerful stuff. And this is my solution to it. So the ABCs of metabolic eating, this is the basis of the nutrition plans that I provide, because it kind of touches on all of the parts of what I would consider to be a good nutrition, lifestyle way of eating. So A is to avoid ultra processed foods. These are foods made with flour that's been ultra processed, sugar that's been ultra processed, oils that have been ultra processed. You pick it up, you read the list of ingredients, and you can't pronounce half the stuff. These foods definitely make people sick. They drive insulin levels up, amongst other inflammatory processes, and they contain loads of other harmful ingredients that are actually banned in a lot of other countries. So you really should not be eating these foods. I like to use the 200-year rule. You could ask yourself, hey, was this food around 200 years ago? And walk away. And you might say, well, Dr. Christine, they ate bread 200 years ago, and they sure did, but they didn't eat bread with all this stuff in it. No, they did not. And so what you should do is eat whole foods. That's it. It's a simple, basic eat whole foods. Definitely building meals with high quality protein, which is meat, fish, and eggs. Meat, fish, and eggs. When I say high quality protein, I mean protein that has all of the amino acids that you need for life, and those are found in meat, fish, eggs. They're more than just protein in the sense that they contain all these other micronutrients that are essential, especially for brain health, for bodily health. Uh, and this really has this really is the secret to weight loss, eating these proteins, specifically those proteins. So one of the things, one of the hot topics today in the weight loss world are these injectable medications: Ozempic, Wegovy, Saxenda, Mounjaro. These medications contain a hormone called GLP, which is a hormone that we all make. All of our stomachs make this hormone, mostly and specifically in response to consuming high quality protein, which is protein from meat, fish, and eggs. Um, and so, I mean, that's incredibly powerful. That is actually how you are supposed to end a meal. So when you eat that protein, you are giving a signal to your body. Your gut is giving a signal to your body that you are consuming the foods that are needed for life, and that GLP hormone releases from your gut in response to the protein and goes to your brain and says, hey, we've got the food that we need. You can shut off the appetite right now. And in fact, there is a problem with people when there are shortages of this medication, or their insurance no longer covers it, or they can no longer afford it. The only way that has been shown to successfully come off of that medication without regaining weight is by using this metabolic approach with a protein forward way of eating. Be careful. Be careful of proteins that are touted as healthy, but that are actually ultra processed foods instead. Always pick things with less ingredients. A common thing that we're talking about is how much protein should you be eating? This is, again, the foundation of the nutrition plans, and it's based off of your lean body mass. So there's a scale that patients step on in my office that tells me what their lean body mass is, and we calculate how much protein you should be having based off of that. And if you're not in the scale, or you can't step on the scale, we can use a different way to calculate it based off of height. C in the ABCs is to consume carbs consciously. Carbohydrates, massive umbrella of foods that includes everything from your typical breads, rices, pasta, candies, Cokes, sodas, to beans, rice, legumes, nuts, seeds, and fruits and vegetables. All of these things contain carbohydrates. And when we are talking about a broken body fat cycle, it is key to understanding that carbohydrates have the most significant pull on what's going on with your body fat cycle, because foods all trigger insulin in different levels. And carbohydrates, of the three macronutrients, carbs, protein, and fat, carbohydrates trigger the most robust insulin response. And this is a protective mechanism. This is a good thing, because carbohydrates turn into sugar in your bloodstream, and sugar is like little knives in your bloodstream. It is not good. We have a very narrow, tight range of tight blood sugar range that we want our bodies to stay in. And when we start to go higher than that, and if you stay higher with elevated blood sugars for too long, we know the consequences of that, because that's what happens in diabetics with uncontrolled blood sugar. They get heart attacks and strokes and vascular disease, and they go blind, and they end up on dialysis. And that's what happens when sugar is too high in your bloodstream for too long. And so what insulin is trying to do is make sure that doesn't happen. And so understand that expanding body fat and storing that sugar is much more protective than letting your organs rot in high levels of sugar. So what I'm saying is that expansion is a protective mechanism. It's especially protective for your brain. Your blood-brain barrier ensures that there's actually 1/3 less sugar in your brain at all times compared to the rest of your body, because your brain is highly susceptible to any kind of fluctuations in your blood sugar. So how many carbs should you eat? This is like a big question. And probably less. therapeutic carbohydrate reduction is an incredibly powerful metabolic tool because it is seeking to bring down carbohydrate levels, therefore using that to bring down insulin levels and restore your natural body fat cycle. Um, there is a handout that I will be sending to Sarah with some more information on therapeutic carbohydrate reduction and some charts that anybody, if anybody's interested in getting started, you can look at and kind of have an idea of what a nutrition plan might look like. But really, the answer to this is that it's really highly variable. It really depends on where your metabolism's at. If you have high levels of insulin, if you have a lot of muscle, if you're working out, if you're sick, and really, we don't have to guess. We can test. We can use things like glucose monitoring to see how your body responds to carbohydrates. We can also just go by how you're feeling. But it's really key to understand that carbohydrates are a significant lever controlling your metabolism and your body fat cycle and what's going on. D is do include solid fats. This might be the hardest one for people to wrap their heads around because it has been so indoctrinated into us that we should not consume fat because of its caloric density. But fat, of all the macronutrients, is actually the least likely to cause a release of your insulin. And that's because your body knows exactly what to do with fat. It's always shrinking its body fat, releasing fat into the bloodstream. It's not in a rush to clear it from your bloodstream. Fat, when you eat fat, just like when you eat protein, your gut releases hormones that will go to your brain and say, hey, we've got food. You can, turn off the appetite because we're eating nutrient dense food. So animal fats and whole food fats actually contain nutrients as well. Your fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, are exclusively found in fats because they're fat soluble. So it is an important component to eating. If anybody is familiar with Weston A. Price, there's probably no better scientist who has documented that. He's actually a dentist, and he was a dentist who studied modern primal cultures and was able to take photography of dental structures before and after their diets were changed. And he attributed the removal of animal fats to the malformation that he was seeing, as well as a whole slew of other chronic diseases that showed up in these primal cultures. Anyways, it's a fascinating book. Really, when it comes to good fats, bad fats, the fats you want to avoid are these vegetable seed oils. Biochemically, they're unsaturated and unstable. On a shelf, they spontaneously turn to trans fats, and I think everybody agrees that those are bad. They don't trigger the same appetite suppression that you get when you eat whole food fats. You can't actually burn that fat for energy. They're omega fats, and they're not used in the same way saturated fats are used in your body, and you can't actually burn them. They just kind of stay in your body until you happen to excrete them in your bowels. And they do this weird thing to your fat cells where they make them expand wider than baseline, and they just really wreak havoc on your body. You don't want to eat these foods. Okay, how much fat should you have? How much of the good fat should you have? Well, I tell people to eat enough fat until they feel full. And that, again, depends on your goals, depends on where you're at. You got to understand protein, fat, carbs. These are all levers that can go up and down throughout your journey. They won't stay the same. The start of your journey is going to be different than 3 months in, which will definitely be different than a year out. And so things change over time. E is to eat salt with water. And this is another really tough one for people to wrap their head around. And I wish that I wish I could take people's fear of salt and project it towards sugar, because I always tell people that they are really scared of the wrong white powder. When we're targeting fixing your body fat cycle by reducing insulin levels, you got to understand and remember, insulin is your master metabolic hormone. It controls all your organs, including your kidneys. And when it's around, it tells your kidneys to actually hold on to salt. So water follows, because when you store carbohydrates in your muscles, they're stored with water. Needless to say, when you are reducing your carbs or getting on this kind of a plan, you waste salt. It's very, very uncomfortable. And if you do not consume enough salt to keep up with the symptoms, you're going to feel miserable and think that this isn't working. But actually, when you get those symptoms, it is working. You just need to combat them with eating enough salt. And people always ask about blood pressure with salt. Isn't that going to rise my blood pressure? Actually, low salt diets can lead to high blood pressure. And I threw this in last minute because this was a phenomenal study where people went on a metabolic diet versus the DASH diet, which is the diet recommended for blood pressure. These patients were pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic. And what they found is, with the eating plan that I am promoting here, there was twice as big a drop in blood pressure. And again, this eating plan necessitates consumption of salt to avoid having symptoms. They also lost more weight and they reduced their markers of diabetes by way less than the standard of care that your doctors are currently offering. Okay, F is for feast and then fast. And I bring this back to your body is not going to burn the food just because you eat it. It wants to store it first. And we've been fed this notion in diet culture, workout culture, that if we need to eat like every 2-3 hours to keep our metabolism going. And what I am saying is the exact opposite is true. If you want to rev up your metabolism, you need to eat your meal, be done with it, and let your body do the rest. And that's how it revs up. Let your body be without food, because fasting is really when homeostasis happens. Housekeeping happens. This is when your body can clear itself of infections, or clear itself of cancer, or heal whatever injury has happened. If you're eating food, your body can't do housekeeping. Your body has to manage the food that it's eaten. So feasting and fasting is really where the money's at in terms of healing, self-cleansing. Your mitochondria are only cleansing itself in a fasted state. It can't do that in a fed state. And then remember, when you are fasting, being away from food, you're making ketones. So again, I just want to clear a misconception. This isn't about, fasting for days on end. It simply is eating 2-3 meals a day and not snacking in between as a first step. Longer fasts can be used for therapeutic reasons. And those can get really exciting results for people who are stalled or not getting progress. Pretty cheap to fast too, costs nothing. Okay. Fasting from things other than food become very important on this journey. Don't underestimate this. Getting essentials. These are, I'm not a big nutrient supplement pusher, but everybody needs magnesium, especially on this plan. In the same way you waste salt, you waste magnesium. Pretty much everyone is vitamin D deficient unless you're supplementing. Iodine has been a new nutrient that has come to my attention that I think a lot of people are suffering profound deficiencies from. So we're looking into that. And then iron is always a good one, especially in females, to check up on. Don't forget to get essentials other than nutrition, movement, sleep, sunlight, grounding, community. All of these play a major role into your metabolism in a broader sense. So those are my ABCs of metabolic eating. And I will open the floor up now for questions.